Hello, welcome to my interpretation of the astrological movements from April 9th, which is today, Monday, to this coming Sunday, April 12th. Okay, the biggest thing happening this week is by far the fact that the planet Mars is moving into a new sign and the first sign of Aries. Thursday, April 9th, this is going to be huge. I have talked about the fact that we have been waiting for this for a long time in other videos. I know many of my people who are watching this have birthdays on April 9th or have significant Aries placements. And a lot of my clients recently are also having Aries placements. And so it's a moment where I think the Aries people, the Aries energy is waiting to have that clear direction to move forward. That is what Aries is. It is singularity in the present moment. Aries has no thinking, Aries is all action. And so that basically means by Thursday, we're going to fully have given ourselves permission to start taking the action with single pointed focus that we might have been waiting many, many years for, so much so that I've been seeing, again, for myself and for my clients, people have been really struggling since 2021, 2020, even 2020. And there was something really profoundly big that started then, I know in my own life too. And it seems to not have been able to get off the ground. I don't know, there's an astrologer I love called Brittany. She does Ethereal Astrology, that's her channel name. And she talks about this near constantly in her videos, the fact that we've been trying to get to like a new and better life since 2020. And it's taken us this entire 5 years essentially to do so. I'm not going to obviously say much more about her perspective, but I bring her in because it is echoing in my own head as I say this. This is the last week also before we have a new moon in Aries next week, which I'll talk about then. But that new moon to me is the reset and the go flag of whatever this big new chapter of life that we've been trying to step into since 2020. This really sounds like I'm plagiarizing her. I hope you believe that I am not. Just go check out her work and let me show you mine. So starting out today, Monday, we have the moon moving through the sign of Sagittarius right here. This is really nice because the moon, when it moved through this sign right here, right before it, in the last few days before this week started, last week, that was really a lot deeper and more psychologically rough than even I was anticipating. I knew that we were going to be having a big moment when the moon was in Scorpio, opposing Venus and making a square to Pluto, something very deeply unsettling in our psychological state because of some change we were making in our physical environment. That rippled out a little bit longer than I thought that it would. So I think this Sagittarius moon time we're having today is a welcome moment of optimism and faith and like being able to move into the world and explore our ideas after a bit of a deeper week than we might have anticipated. We have the moon in Sag, things are a little bit more optimistic. The other fun thing happening today on Monday is that we have the last quarter trine between the sun and the moon. This trine between the sun and the moon will be on Monday and into like the early hours of Tuesday, but essentially all Monday and all Tuesday, we have the moon in a fire sign and the sun in a fire sign, which means that it is in a trine moment. This is a nice time because this trine essentially is saying that we have a very fiery opportunity to make something happen. That initially we wanted to start actually at the Pisces new moon right here. The Pisces new moon was right around here, right around where Mars is right now, actually. And since then, we've been growing whatever intention we put out at the Pisces new moon, which I think was what, March, mid-March 17th, something like this. The moon right here has been growing in this direction the whole time. We had the full moon last week right here, and that illuminated something about how we see ourselves ultimately, I think. And in the days following, we have realized that we've actually been successful in growing the intention that the Pisces new moon wanted us to, or what we felt we needed to at the Pisces new moon. And as a quick reminder, that Pisces new moon was really about starting something again, starting something again, like I said, we were trying to start in 2020, 2021, and finally just for the last time, kind of trying to start it again, returning to that same intention, even if how we've failed so many times. And I was reading it that way because this was a new moon right at the very end of the very last sign. And, you know, now that we've had the full moon of this cycle, we've seen it peak. So we've seen something really lovely happen, likely very socially in our lives regarding whatever we wanted to restart from March 7th or from 2020, 2021. And now we're kind of seeing it wane, essentially, just like the moon. We're seeing right now on Monday into Tuesday the wisdom. This is a Sagittarius thing. We're seeing the wisdom of what it means to really trust that we can take action for ourselves with this sun in Aries, obviously Saturn in Aries as well. And this trine really means this trine in particular, which happens after the full moon, right? There's one trine that happens before the full moon, which happens right here, and that's still when the moon is waxing. But now the moon is waning, and so we're having a waning trine. And what that means is this is ready to be socially integrated. That waning trine means we've pushed out of whatever our individual personal internal work needs to do, which happens before the moon gets full, and we finally are ready to disseminate. I think that's the right word. We're disseminating the fruits, really, of the peak of the labor that happened, right? Everything was ripe at the full moon, and then things begin to fall now. And now we are disseminating, what is it? In this case, Sagittarius stuff, our logic, not logic, sorry, our the opposite of logic, our wisdom. There's something unique to each of us, which at this point is also ruled by Jupiter in Cancer here. So there's some element of emotional wisdom that each of us are ready to share with the world. And like this day, Monday, is the exact day to share that with the world. Now, that Jupiter, I think I was trying to say this earlier, that Jupiter is also square to the sun today. And so we are really seeing the wisdom here that we are supposed to share with the world. And we are seeing it because it is being pushed out of us, right? Each of us individually, that is the sun in Aries. But I don't think it's a bad tension. I think tension, like I said, is kind of just like going to the gym. You need to pick up the dumbbell and do some reps. And so, whatever the interplay essentially is for you between expressing yourself in this present moment, which is the sun in Aries, and recognizing, realizing, embodying the emotional wisdom that you have and that you've gained over this entire transit, almost over the last year, and then seeing how your personal, which is a moon thing, your personal embodiment, your personal expression of this emotional wisdom is actually ripe and ready to be shared with the world today into tomorrow, Tuesday. This is really starting off the week on a really high note, I think. There's a ton of like optimism after, again, a much more difficult week than even I was anticipating. Again, I saw that um, that square, the Venus-Pluto square, was harder than I was imagining, just psychologically harder than I was imagining, because it came out of nowhere, right? It's kind of that thing where you can't always fully prepare for this, and that's why I'll take a brief interlude to say astrology is never the answer, okay? I think it's so fun to interpret astrology and to be an astrologer and to teach astrology and to empower people to recognize this is a language that's possible to learn, but it's up to you how you're going to use the language. And when you give the language more meaning than necessary, then it can either block you in some ways, or even today, this overinflation is very, very possible. I am honestly even feeling it as I'm recording this. So, yeah, it's just this is just us and our free will expression right now coming up against the hordes of emotional wisdom that each of us have within us or that we want to learn. And it's trying to like seep out the edges whenever I see a square. It has to be really well trained and it takes a ton of focus. And so that's kind of what's happening today on Monday. We're still very active in this first quarter sextile between Pluto and Saturn, which is to me a very, very big deal still. Uh, If we think back to again, 2020, which I'm talking about a lot these days. Um, the last time that, oops, the last time that Saturn made an aspect to Pluto was in 2020, 2021. They made a conjunction right at the edge here between Capricorn and Aquarius. And it's really remarkable because whatever you were kind of breaking out of in 2020 into 2021, whatever you were choosing to do differently in that time, you've really been working on it this whole time, but the type of work you've been doing on it was likely a little bit scattered. That's the essence of this new phase that's happening between Saturn and Pluto. You see, Saturn's only gone just about 60 degrees away from Pluto because each one of these signs is 30 degrees. And so, what that means astrologically, how we interpret that is that new phase, which basically goes to around 45 degrees. That new phase is about limitless exploration, just moment to moment, you're choosing, you're figuring out what you're not actually figuring anything out. It's very Mars energy. It's like you're just acting. And it's when we get to the stage we are right now, which is that 60-degree first quarter sextile, where we recognize we can't just willy-nilly go off and do things anymore. We have to start doubling down. We have to start choosing, and then we have to start kind of not isolating ourselves, but really, really focusing in on one thing specific that we learned while we were out in the new phase, and we need to really go down in on it. And in Saturn, that's a commitment to self that we learned or that we kind of reestablished in the death of an old group. So that's still really important as something going on in the background. And I think as the week proceeds, it's only going to become more important because we have Mars entering Aries again. And it's really this Aries energy stuff happening these days that's really forcing us, pushing us to be who we are without limits, without goals, without expectations, like who we are right here, right now. That's it, full stop. Limitless love for that. Let me move on to Tuesday. So as I was mentioning, a lot of what's happening on Monday is the same as what I feel is happening on Tuesday, simply because we have the moon still moving through Sagittarius, still being ruled by this Jupiter, which is then ruled by the moon. We have this mutual reception going on Monday and Tuesday, which essentially just means we're working with our own emotional logic in a really big way. And at the same time, that sun is still in this square to Jupiter. And so our personhood, our individual self in every present moment is really pushing up against this wisdom. So there's a big like emotional intellect going on in the first 2 days of this week. I just see it really as we're working still in the background of this really strong commitment to a sense of self, a new way of ordering our reality. Saturn, because a group that we previously were a part of has died in 2020, and Saturn is still kind of working on that. And because it's Aries season is why I'm focusing so much on this, all these Aries stuff. Also because again, imminently Mars is going to enter Aries. Before it does that, I'll show you on Wednesday, we're going to have a sextile between Mars and Uranus, both at the very ends of these signs. But let me get to that on, the next one. What I can say is that for most of this day, we're going to be feeling a square between the moon and then these planets at the end of Pisces. What do you believe? What do you feel as though you believe right now with the moon in Sagittarius? And how are you actually articulating that? What pressures are pushing you to articulate that? And actually, because this is a last quarter square, the moon has come all the way around this way. This is the letting go of some belief that we have in the way that we've articulated and the way that we've acted. Okay, I'm getting this because, right, this is that last quarter square. Yeah, Monday, Tuesday are much, they're big days. They're big days emotionally, big days intellectually, and also big days to kind of surrender a belief. So surrender a way that our emotions have been leading us into different explorations of the world, if you will, with that last quarter square. All right, so by the end of the day on Wednesday, the moon will have already moved into a new sign, into Capricorn, and all of the intellectual slash optimistic slash thinking that we did on Monday and Tuesday really turns into work on Wednesday. It's something we want to start actively structuring. Really nice because we'll have a trine growing between the moon and Venus. So this trine between the moon and Venus really says there's something about how much physical space we've been making for ourselves. I really read Venus in Taurus as so Venus is where we're open. Anywhere Venus is where we are just simply open. Again, Venus can be this feminine archetype, but it is more mechanically speaking just where we are literally open to receive. And in Taurus, this is like material reality. It's sensory reality, the things that actually we can touch, taste, feel, and it's our biological desire to survive and to recognize the abundance that exists in our world. And because we're coming off of the square to Pluto from last week, that Venus is really ripe. Okay. It's been through something. Venus learned how to relax, I think, because it got that Pluto kind of stressed it out. That square to Pluto last week was saying, confront the fact that something is dying again, confront the fact that um, with the emergence of life always comes death, with like comes deep psychological frustration, really. Pluto's always psychological, but in Aquarius, it's all to do with the way our minds are working. This could have been something about a group, something very personal that we're trying to feel good in a group. And I think we do, but it just we had to make some space for a change in that group. And by this Wednesday, the 8th, sorry, we're going to be feeling like something has paid off. Like there's some opportunity that comes to us in terms of how we get to literally rely on reality itself, which is a Capricorn thing because of how much effort has been made to create physical space in which we feel good over the last week. Okay. So that's really quite nice. I see that. And I think that trine will follow into the next day a little bit, just because it's not even exact today, but it's enough. The sextile between Mars and Uranus here. This is what's called a last quarter sextile. That's because it is a 300-degree aspect, and that's because Uranus moves very slow. At some point over the last 2 years, Mars was right here. Mars has been moving all the way around this way to get to here, which means it only has this much more to go, which is not much at all. And how we read that astrologically is that the story is beginning to end in a bigger way right now. And what that means as an interpretation is that this last 60 degrees, it's going to travel. This moment on this day is actually the final opportunity, I would say, to actually socially integrate whatever was going on when Mars made that conjunction to Uranus, which, gosh, I don't even have the date for that. Would have been 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, almost, maybe 2 years ago, if anyone wants to look up that date. But just there's the thing about Uranus is that it's so spontaneous, so like it's so out of left field and non-linear that we might not even be able to track it back to whatever that date was because Uranus is really pulling from the infinite collective consciousness in a way. Well, it's really the infinite individuated consciousness. Pisces is the more Pisces and Neptune is the more collective consciousness space, and then Uranus is the individuated consciousness space. And so when we have Mars making the aspect this way, Mars is very much so the present moment. We have the actions we are taking in the present moment, really kicking off this final opportunity for us to do Uranus and Taurus things, which is really, really grasp, really get a grip on, or rather let go of, haha, but like really have a moment where we deeply recognize and like have a light switch turn on about material intelligence. That's what I say all the time about, that's not rightly spelled, rightly, okay. Material intelligence, because Uranus, anywhere it goes, is about intelligence. Taurus is about materiality. So this Mars in Pisces is going to be a very, I would say, inspired action. Pisces inspired Mars action, and inspired action that we have, that we take, that allows us to have just really maybe even another clicking moment with understanding how resourced we are, understanding how much abundance is around us that we weren't seeing before, how intelligent the physical world is, the physical body, nature, fruit, all of this. There's something when we take an inspired action um, at this time that we're something's going to lock in. Okay, let's move to Thursday. Moon is still in Capricorn all day Thursday. We're still structuring, ordering this work. I would say this trine is still very much so in effect. So there's something physical, structural, material happening on Wednesday into Thursday that I think feels really good, actually. And that's wonderful. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something about, again, our work, our structural bones of reality, how we're feeling about that with the moon in Capricorn. And then something really lovely is going to be giving us essentially an opportunity to deepen in how we trust the world, how we trust our own enjoyment in the world, how we trust our capacity to survive, and how being open to that. This is not a very well, yes, this is the same day that Mars enters Aries, but it's interesting that it's the same day we have this trine in effect. There's a really solid, deep understanding of how to be open and how to take action that really kicks off on this day on Thursday because Venus is in her home sign and then Mars is suddenly in his home sign. And then this really brings up this much bigger thing that I want to talk about because the vibe shift, I hate saying that, it's not just a vibe shift. It's an entire kind of reality shift, subtle reality shift. I think that happens on Thursday because suddenly we don't have a mutual reception between Mars and Neptune anymore. Suddenly, Mars is the only ruler of everything in Aries and everything in Pisces. Okay. Before this, we were having a mutual reception between Mars in Pisces and Neptune in Aries. And what that meant was we were essentially spearfishing, um, shooting arrows into the water with Mars and Pisces, and then having to steam the fish that we caught. Everything had to be a little bit more quiet and gentle with that mutual reception, just in terms of how we were taking action. And maybe that wasn't what we were used to. And so we were feeling a little bit clumsy in the water, not able to land as many fish as we thought we could, really up until the end of this transit when we started to figure out what was going on. But by the time that happened, Mars steps into Aries and suddenly bullseye. So there's something really big that shifts. And I would say probably in relationships as well, because we have these planets that essentially rule our own inner dichotomies finally landing in their own signs, which means there's not as much translation. There's not as much translation that needs to be happening. Everything feels very clear pretty immediately. The other thing on this day is that the moon will oppose Jupiter, which is just, again, seeing our emotional wisdom very clearly, seeing everything that we understand emotionally very clearly from the perspective, like from the perspective of its context. Our emotional wisdom can fit somewhere on Thursday, and I think that suddenly we're going to know what to do with it, and it's going to feel really good. We're going to know how to relax, be open, receive, and the actions we want to take are finally gonna work and land, okay? But let me just go back to this rulership thing really quick because it bears repeating and I think about this and talk about it all the time. This is a method that I'm gonna be making a workshop about soon where I'll walk you through how to do this in your own chart and then we'll apply it to a specific area of life, probably an artistic practice. But I read rulerships like this in a modern sense with modern rulerships. And so the big thing is what's changed on Thursday is we have Mars being the ruler of everything in Pisces, North Node, Mercury, and everything in Aries, which is Neptune, Saturn, Sun, Chiron. So we have this part of the chart, which is all being ruled by Mars. And then we have Venus, who's the her home sign ruler, which is ruling Uranus and Taurus, and oops, and Pluto and Aquarius, because Pluto and Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and Taurus. And then, of course, Juno, if we want to include her. But right now, we have these two rulers going on. The moon at this time is also going to be ruled by Mars because it's ruled by Saturn. Jupiter is going to be ruled by the moon at this moment, which means it's also under Mars's rulership. Oops, oh, everything went away. And then the South Node is ruled by Mercury at this point, which is under Mars's rulership. There's literally nothing that isn't ruled by Venus or Mars by this time, and there aren't any flip-flopping mutual receptions going on anymore. Does that make sense? Like, are you seeing this? Which to me basically means we have two functions from Wednesday onward. We have the function of receiving, of being open, of enjoying life, and we have the function of taking action. And it's very straightforward. Okay, so my point is you can do this in your own chart and you can see how many different rulers are existing. And these are going to be your kind of baselines of how you track and follow everything down essentially. And I'll walk us through what that looks like. It's like likely in a comparison of your own you'll write out your own process, you'll write out your own artistic process, and then we'll map it to the rulership patterns because we can make a tree where we see the logic as it flows down to the rulerships. I feel confident in this because I've done it for my chart in my life. I am an artist, a painter. I've been for many years. And yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. The reason that I like doing it this way is because it flips the impetus, it flips the onus on the world imposing these patterns on you. And then when we do it this way, we see that the patterns are going to happen regardless. And so we can show up from inside of them and begin to change them in different ways in different places. In the same way where if you are an artist and you think, oh, I'm a tortured artist, I have to be an artist, I have all this emotion I need to bring out of me, I need to transmute it. I used to think that way very, very deeply, and now I don't. Now I think there is a process of exhaustion that being an artist carries you through. And I think that after that process is over, it's completely devastating because you feel like you've died. But on the other end of that, you get to choose what you make. And the thing is, you don't need to actually kill yourself or exhaust the process in like maybe the way that I have. Someone just needs to tell you that you can choose. Like, are you feeling the way you want to feel when you're making your work? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't psychologize it. You should just start making something else. So I have a lot to say on this, obviously, that I haven't shared a lot about on this channel yet, but this is a big part of me and my life and what I want to share. So if this is resonating with you, try it out on your own chart with whatever rulerships you want. If you're interested in walking through it with me, I definitely want to try to do that workshop. I'll try to make it as financially accessible as possible. So just leave me a comment below if that is somewhat interesting to you. But let's move on. This is all right, Friday. Huh. Okay. Moon moves into Aquarius on Friday, which is going to be big, I think. I mean, it's not big, but the energy of what it means to have created all this structure for ourselves, especially in that nice trine to Venus that we had, the feeling good, the ease of which we're going to be able to take action now, the ease with which we understand how to receive things more deeply now. Moon suddenly goes into Aquarius and we start to throw off the script again. Okay. Aquarius is where we go to throw off the script. And it's a part of every monthly cycle where the moon goes through all of these signs every month, but it's just this part of the cycle that we created this structure. And now we're going to try to go beyond it. And how do we go beyond it? We test it, okay? We created a structure for ourselves, and it's really into Friday. I mean, most of the day, the moon will be at the later degrees of Capricorn, which means it will also trine Uranus. There'll be, again, something sparky happening in material reality by the end of this week. But by the end of the day here, the moon will move into Aquarius, probably 10 p.m. Eastern time. Eastern time. Oh no, no, 8 maybe even. For a record, the moon moves 1 degree every 2 hours. So that's how calculated. This to me is just, we're finishing out some work on Friday, and then we're gonna go into a group by Friday night. Friday night's a good night to go and spend time with a group of people or see a new idea or engage with a new idea and just kind of watch also as emotionally your reality begins to change a little bit. Emotionally, things start to um, kind of multiply or fractalize because this Saturn, I'm sorry, Capricorn, which is Saturn rules Capricorn, the moon moving into Aquarius from Capricorn is very much so like we set up the structure for ourselves and it is still reliable, it's still good, that's still the point. But now we're going to use that as a base to do further trials for further explorations. You know what I mean? I think in its highest expression, that Aquarius is where we can see the horizon and see what's coming from the horizon, allowing ourselves to stand firmly where we are in Capricorn so that we trust reality and it's reliable and that we're going to survive, but we still want to be able to see the horizon and what's on the edge. So that that's coming to me very strongly. I don't normally talk about the moon moving into Aquarius like that. Usually I think about the moon moving into Aquarius as it's going to like make a conjunction to Pluto at these early degrees. But for whatever reason, I think because we've been through so much with the Venus Pluto square in the last week, I don't know why I just get a sense that this is a much more solid Aquarius moon transit right now on April 10th for some reason. I don't know why I'm getting this. Mm, yeah. I mean, yeah. I think that's all I want to say for Friday. Saturday, we have the moon still in Aquarius. The moon will have passed Pluto. Moon in Aquarius will now be kind of making a square to Venus. There's not a bunch going on Saturday for me because Mars is in Aries. Again, we know how to take action. We know how to receive. The moon squaring Venus isn't the biggest deal in the world to me. It's pretty much just this whole letting go of a group. It's like it's letting go of what we thought humanity was, I think. And even in the day before, I didn't say this, but well, that'll be the last quarter square between the sun and the moon, um, which is a big day to let go of the system that we built for ourselves, the structure that we thought we were supposed to keep making and to recognize it's actually time to build a new one. It's this last quarter square that it'll be on Friday that, we'll realize we have to let go of some hardened past. And, but it's not a big, huge hoorah letting go. It's like a moment letting go, internal letting go, spiritual letting go, because it's only a week away at this point from the new moon in Aries, which, by the way, will be conjunct Chiron. There's a brand new start really happening next week. April, what is it, 17th, I think. And it'll be really this weekend, the Friday, Saturday, where we recognize we've done what we needed to do from that Pisces new moon. And we need to make space for this new beginning that's going to happen. We're gonna feel if we have any pushback this weekend on our life. It's time to just let go because then that moon again on Saturday is going to square the Venus. And so whatever that nice moment we had in the days prior of structuring reality, it's not that it's wrong. It's just that it might mean something different socially than we think it does. And we need to make space for for it to mean something different socially. So then this last day, which is Sunday, the moon still in Aquarius all day. Really, the moon is making its last quarter. That's wacky. The moon is making its last quarter sextile to the sun, another 300-degree aspect. That's 3,000, but it is supposed to be a tiny little degree sign there. This again is the final opportunity from the last new moon in order to do something socially that we've been trying to for a very long time. Because this is really the last day, I would say, that we're gonna make a big attempt to do something externally, or that we might even feel like it's ripe, like it's a good time to engage the social spheres when we're doing something. And it's not to say we're not going to do that in the early part of next week, but things just get really big in Pisces and really dark. I don't mean that in a psychological way. I mean that we're not going to see the moon anymore at all. And what that reflects is that we're really internalizing something. We're internalizing everything that's happened since the last Pisces new moon, and we're recognizing, like, probably in a very literal sense, in a very physical sense, because Mars is in Aries and actions are visible, things are happening. This isn't going to be like it could be just like you thinking about it by yourself, but more likely to me, there's going to be a literal shift that you have already put yourself through, which is making you pause and wait before going back and starting again, if that makes sense. So this is the last day, really, I would say, before a momentary pause that's going to happen between the 12th to the 17th. But really, any moon in Aquarius time, super social, we're really tapping into, again, how our individual life, how our individual consciousness connects with the larger consciousness. And because Pluto's there, this is just more important than ever to be coming to awareness of our humanity, which is, let's say, distinct from our individuality, which is an Aries thing, the present moment individuality, which is an Aries thing. Present moment presence is different from what it means to be a human. Present moment presence in action, in breath, in our blood is a very direct, literal thing. But humanity, as an Aquarius thing, is much more about what we think we're doing, who we think we are in Aquarius, and how a shared thought will bring many people together, or a shared thought is literally the magnetic neural network that all humans share that keep us together. And that's why we have like technology associated with this area of life, because now we're seeing quite literally how shared technology will change people's brains, not only from the scrolling and the doom scrolling and everything people talk about, but like the ideas that can be shared online more easily, more socially, whether they're true or not, don't really matter, because it's what is going to be viral. And of course, there are positive and negative shadow positive sides of all of this, right? In terms of who's controlling it and why, but I don't really care about that. My point here is that there is this is a Rupert Sheldrake who I love. Rupert Sheldrake talks about the mind is not the brain. We have a brain here, but our mind is a collective thing. We don't store memories in the mind. The memories are stored in spaces, in the material logic, right? Because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is at this final energetic degree. There's something about the material logic of reality that we're realizing memory is stored everywhere materially. We're realizing we're finally clocking this in our life right now, right before Uranus will enter Gemini. Even when Uranus leaves Gemini, there's still material intelligence, okay? This is just a lesson that we're learning right now. And I think with this Moon in Aquarius transit, by the end of this weekend, essentially, this is gonna be why things are gonna start working, is because, and this is this final opportunity we have to make this Pisces new moon intention come true, It's really getting a grip on the fact that Aquarius exists. Okay, I'm not going to over explain that. I hope that means something to you. If not, it's a good time to work with Aquarius and just study it. I'll tell you a funny story. I'm going to stop sharing. When I was studying astrology in 2020, okay, 2021, 2020, I was studying, and I remember almost every single astrological archetype was truly more like a remembering for me. I didn't really have to memorize anything. The first time I heard it, everything stuck except for Aquarius, except for Uranus. That was the teaching, that lesson that, the day we talked about the archetype of Aquarius for the first time, let's say, that was the only time, because I had studied on my own before, and so everything was kind of just being cemented for me. But I remember I had to ask my teacher, I really don't understand Aquarius, and I understand everything else. And I don't think my teacher said this verbatim, but what I gathered from what he was saying was like, that's the point. Like, the point of Aquarius is that it's the thing that's not understood. Aquarius is where you break from structural reality. Aquarius is where you break from things working, and you're in that realm of, oh, ooh, right? Like, we can push beyond things working. We can push beyond logic for the sake of. We can always push beyond. It is literally the archetype of pushing beyond. And because Pluto is there, we are so wanting to push beyond, and we are also recognizing that we are done pushing beyond in the ways we have pushed beyond thus far, which is where I come to this idea that I'm really, really working on, of like, astrology itself is a Uranian Aquarian concept because it is the edge of our known reality. Astrology is still going to work for me, it's still going to work for you, but I think that we have to completely change. We have to let it change us. We have to change the way we are talking about it, interpreting it. Once Uranus moves into Gemini and that trine perfects again between Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius, the way that we talk about astrology, the way we talk about anything Aquarian is going to have to change. It will change. It is changing. And that's really the pulse that I have my finger on. And it's so slow for me to be able to understand because I don't know anyone else who's talking or thinking about it this way of their own volition. And yet I find how liberating it is to speak differently, which will be a Uranus in Gemini thing, and to allow change, transformation, Pluto, of our minds and the way that our minds literally are fractalizing and being our entire reality, how we are categorizing that change, which is a Gemini thing. That there's a incredible opportunity for each of us to actually deepen in that change. So if you have strong Aquarius placements right now, um, or even Gemini placements for that matter, or even a Libra placement for that matter, there's like an enormous social opportunity to start speaking differently, to be in a group that's speaking differently, and thus to literally start reorganizing your reality differently. That doesn't mean you need to be in a brand new group. It's just about speaking things differently and allowing information to come in differently, okay? All right, this is a very long weekly video. I decided to do it in a way that I didn't prepare at all. So I hope it's been interesting for you. If it has, just let me know if you like this or you prefer the other options of how I've done this in the past. And if you want a personal reading, the link is below. Bye for now.